Good afternoon. Happy Saturday, y'all. My name is Gaetan. Glad to be back, just like every other weekends, to discuss today. Um, it is a memorable day today. We will uh, talk about Lumumba, and today marks January 17th, um, marks the 65th years since the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. Patrice Lumumba, like we always said, he was the first democratically elected prime minister of the Congo. So think about him as they had a president at the time, but the president wasn't assuming all the powers. It was the prime minister that took care of the executive and everything. Um, so 65 years since Congo's prime minister was murdered. And throughout the at least the first 2 weeks of January, Friends of the Congo, we have been posting about Lumumba 17 days up until today to educate, to remind folks who Lumumba was, what he stood for, and why he was killed, because they didn't just kill a man, they killed an idea. And 65 years since he was murdered not because he failed the Congo, murdered not because he believed, not he wasn't killed because he was a communist, right? But he was killed because he believed too deeply in the country, in the Congo, in his people, and also the ideal that essentially motivated him to fight, an idea of a free Congo, a Congo free from colonization. So Lumumba was assassinated on January 17th, 1961. And if you think about it, the Congo becomes independent on June 30th, 1960. Then there was um, political trouble. There was even the intervention of the UN force. There is an uprising in what was a Western back rebellion, if I can say, in the Katanga province. So he didn't really govern for 6 months. He was already under house arrest. They were already trying to plot for his killing. And at Friends of the Congo, we've been saying that, right? That you read declassified document from the CIA. They essentially are clear about their involvement and to what extent they wanted to end physically Patrice Lumumba. You think about or you hear about Belgium, the government of Belgium, the Kingdom of Belgium, involved also into the assassination. The tooth that was returned to the Congolese people a few years ago, that tooth was in Belgium, kept by a Belgian citizen, right? And even the folks, yes, it is black people, it is the Congolese people who pulled the trigger, but who architected that murder, that assassination? Who made sure that the Congo will never be free? So today is actually truth because we realize that the murder of Patrice Lumumba really didn't end on January 17, 1961. That his death actually became a system used to continue to kill leaders that would somehow drift away from a certain idea of global powers. It became a template, it became a policy to subjugate people, to subjugate natives, indigenous. So today's episode is about remembering who Patrice Lumumba was. But most importantly, it's about responsibility. What is your responsibility? What is our responsibility? And it's not a coincidence that his death always coincide with the celebration of Martin Luther King here in the US, because both men were great men, great people that fought and gave their lives for the advancement of Black people in America and Black people in Africa. The year 2025, we also saw the commemoration of the centennial of Patrice Lumumba. Yes, born in 1925, I believe. But also Malcolm X, Frantz Fanon, and the Friends of the Congo. We commemorate that. We, have been in spaces where these three individuals were recognized. Because these men, just like Lumumba today, and we talk about Lumumba, is not a man of the past. So Lumumba is the question that Congo is still being forced to answer today. I found it really interesting the way then and the way it's also being done right now when essentially trying to give the reason why he was assassinated. And it's also the opportunity for us to set the record straight. Lumumba was not a radical. He was not too emotional. He was not unprepared. He was definitely not a communist. He said it himself. That reminds me of a presentation probably shared with you already. Lumumba was clear he was really clear on what he stood for. He explicitly talked about his ideal. And to a question to a journalist, and I'm going to read it, and he says, some of your political opponents accuse you of being a communist. Could you reply to that? And he said, this is a propagandist trick aimed at me. I'm not a communist. The colonialists have campaigned against me throughout the country because I am a revolutionary and demand the abolition of the colonial regime, which ignored our human dignity. They look upon me as a communist because I refuse to be bribed by the imperialists. That was an interview in 1960, July 22nd, 1960, at Francois, which I think was the news at the time. And he even said, we are neither communist, Catholic, nor socialist. We are African nationalist. We reserve the right to choose our friends in accordance with the principle of positive neutrality. That also reminds me the word of Kwame Nkrumah, the very first president of Ghana. And he said, I think if I have to paraphrase, we're not going east, talking about the communist bloc, we're not going west, talking about the Western bloc, we're going forward. But you can see those label of, oh, he's a communist. Oh, she's a socialist. Oh, he's a Marxist. And you see those labels even come back in our day. Because when, for example, they wanted to ban African Stream, which to me was one of the greatest things in terms of online news that had happened to Africans, to Pan-Africans. African Stream, really great online news on Instagram, present on YouTube as well. They're present, I want to say on TikTok, I don't know. But definitely I will follow them on X, Instagram. But what happened before, for them to be banned, because they were banned, they were prevented from even opening a Google account. I didn't even know that Google can ban people. Prevented to have a Gmail account. Prevented to have a YouTube, a TikTok account. Prevented from even getting money monetized on X. Same thing on Instagram. The justification used to ban them was that they were paid by Russia, which to me I find it really interesting, right? That as if African people, Congolese people, the global South cannot think for themselves. That if a black man thinks about being free, it must be funded by our rival, by China, by Russia. Isn't that interesting? As if folks of color, as if folks from the global South, as if Africans can never think about the idea of themselves being free. They cannot. And if African Stream, if Lumumba were so outspoken about the idea of having an Africa belonging to Africans, in which the resources of the African continent will benefit African people first, that is a crazy idea for African themselves to be even thinking. For Lumumba to stand up and go in the presence of King Baudouin of Belgium, talk about Congo being independent, reminding the white folks and the black folks the struggle that the Congo went through. There was absolutely no way for him to even think like that he must be communist. For African Stream to be putting together those videos and investigations, those articles, that is not something that African Stream could do it in its own. I don't even want to dive into these allegations that to me was insulting and low-key racist in the first place. But it is the same allegation that got Lumumba killed. They wanted to kill him. They were looking for a reason to do so. So that label of communism being sponsored by the West, by the East, by Russia, by the Soviet Union, was carefully crafted to justify his killing, the killing of Patrice Lumumba. Because yes, he said it himself, Lumumba was an African nationalist in the truest sense of the word. Because he believed that Congo's wealth, like I said, when I talked about being Pan-African, when I talked about what African Stream was promoting, that in the case of Lumumba, that Lumumba believed that Congo's wealth should benefit Congolese people. We talk about America first today under Trump. Why can't we talk about Congo first? That the political independence without economic sovereignty was meaningless for most, if not countries that were subjugated by the colonial empire. You cannot provide independence to a country and not let them have the control of the economy. So on June 30th, 1960, during Congo's independence ceremony, Lumumba did something unforgivable. Like I mentioned, he spoke the truth. And that truth, like I mentioned, it was that the dignity of the Congolese people was not negotiable. That for the case of the Congo needs to cease being these common markets where everybody will benefit from Congo's resources except the Congolese people themselves. We see that today. It's like Patrice Lumumba's speech is still resonating with Congolese people today when we see agreement being signed, the country being sold, but yet we have yet seen peace. We have yet silenced the guns. We have yet imprisoned those who rape and force children to work in the mines. Lumumba spoke in 1960 while the King Baudouin praised Leopold II for what they have been calling a civilizing mission. While they were praising literally what they call a civilizing mission, Lumumba was unapologetic. He named the racism. He named the whipping, the humiliation, the extraction, the terror. And that's kind of like what essentially what the graphic novel of Maman Bibiane is about. When you think about the work of Patrice Lumumba, his life, and what even led to his assassination. And it's very important to keep this in mind, right? When we are talking about Lumumba, when we talk about the work that he has been doing even before he even became prime minister, there was an organizing effort behind the scene that that folks don't know. There was a struggle that happened for Congolese people led by Patrice Lumumba, who was able to create a coalition not based on tribes, not based on religion, but based on this idea that we love this country, we love the Congo, and we want to be free. This idea of liberation and freedom, this idea of justice. And Lumumba, Maman Bibiane she's explaining in a novel. I'm trying to pull that novel right now. Lumumba, the freedom fighter. It's a very fascinating story, honestly, because people, and I think that's what King Leopold II was trying to, actually King Baudouin was trying to hide the struggle that the Congolese people went through. That they were beaten, they were insulted for the mere fact that they were black, for the mere fact that they are Congolese. And you can essentially see that, and I'm inviting y'all to, go on lumumba days.org to order your book. Order the book so that you can follow the journey of a man. As Malcolm X said himself, the greatest man ever worked on the African continent. That was Malcolm X talking about that. Because if you think about this, notion of having the Belgium arrive in the Congo Free State, raiding villages to collect resources, to collect rubber in a liquid form, please. And they had to collect a certain number or quantity of rubber. I think it was 20 pounds if I have to convert. And if you know how to even collect rubber, you'll be like, that will take somebody the entire day with no breaks. Because in the 1800s, if you can think of black people in America being slaves, what can you say or think about black people in Africa? What do you think happened to them? And we have talked about this in many, many of our episodes. Or even if you go and check, for example, our, partners, our fellow, the Congolese Action Youth platform with the Genocast platform, they dive deep into the role that not just corrupt indigenous at the time played, but also the responsibility of Belgium at the time to, for the sake of minerals, killed almost 10 million people and deport men and women as slaves, whether it is in Tanzania, Zanzibar, or even in America. Did you know that most slaves in America are actually from the Central Africa, from Central Africa, from the Congo? Did you know that? Read the novel. It talks about this influx of slaves from the Congo. It talks about how Belgian soldiers were killing Congolese folks. And he also talks about the birth of Lumumba. Who his parents were. Francois Tolenga and his wife, Julienne Amato Lumenja. And that's from that union that Lumumba will be born. Actually, I found out in this recent post, because we always say Patrice Lumumba, but that even the name that he was able to get, right? That's the entire childhood, how he was raised. And for those who don't know, he never really finished school, went to university per se. A self-made man. That self-made man somehow they tried to indoctrinate him into Christianity by baptizing him and putting him into some works, and you will hear in other stories, in other books, that Lumumba, because of how unfair the pay was, he decided he was not going to pay taxes, and he even encouraged his folks to do the same, or to steal money from the Belgian, money that was supposed to belong to the Congolese people. Because he, at the very young age already, he was already organizing. But that's because also of what the parents instill in him by sending him to a Methodist church, by making sure that he understand the people, the struggle. That you will read in a graphic novel that already in primary school, Lumumba was outraged by the colonial system. That was obviously designed to move Congolese folks at the time to think a certain particular way, to remain enslaved, to not demand the right, to not question the Belgium. And for those who are Congolese or who know a little bit of the Belgian system, and it's completely different from the American system, for example, because it's literally like it's a lecture style. The professor speaks and everybody's shut up and listens. But it's also like how the students refer to the professor. Very polite. Call them Mister. Say vous because they're a sign of respect of teachers. Instead of you, instead of tu. But then you look at the American system when it comes to education, the professor can be like, oh no, my name is Brian, just call me Brian. I was like, wait, what? You want me to call you by your first name, Brian? Or David? Not even Mr. David? No, just call me by my first name. And Lumumba in primary school was expelled from the Methodist Church because he was essentially challenging the teaching, encouraging that blind submission that I'm talking about. But outside, the work continued. the subjugation of Congolese people continued, still had to pick up cotton and other stuff and other minerals or other resources that the Belgian needed, rubber. And Lumumba continued to do that because guess what? He has to survive, right? Like he's Congolese and he needs to also do things that he's asked to do. And I'm gonna pause there because we have our guest who will essentially talk more about the work that he is doing in the Congo and what today, because I'm really curious what today really represent for Congolese people, for himself. So I'm gonna bring up Passy Igunzi. Let me see. Yo, Passy, how you doing?
I'm great, brother. Thank you. Hope you can hear me.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm really sorry. I'm from the Lumumba Mausoleum Museum.
No.
We have been there since this morning with students. That's
Yes, no, no worries, no worries. And so today is 65 years of Lumumba, and I'm really curious to know what that day represent for yourself first, but also for the students, because you mentioned that you first kind of like to the audience for those who don't know. I know you have been on our screen many times, but like remind folks who you are and kind of the work that you're doing, particularly with the kids. Like, what is it? Who are you? And what are the things that you do with the kids? Tell us.
yes, thank you. That's a very good question. And for us, Lumumba physically is not there, but spiritually, ideologically speaking, Lumumba's there. And he represents us the model. He represents us there the guider. So he's a light for us because we are living in the heart of darkness. Darkness. Congo is still in darkness, like Joseph Conrad said. And Lumumba was that light. They thought that they could put him off, but he's still there, still shining in our hearts, in our minds. Physically, they eliminated him, but spiritually speaking, ideologically speaking, emotionally speaking, he is still in us, and that's why we will continue the struggle because the same situation he was living in is still there. They killed him because he was fighting for the unity of the country. They killed him because he was fighting for the people. He was close to the people. He was not there just to stay in the high class or the bourgeois class. He decided to come back and he was elected. He was the first uh, electoral leader, so elected leader in Congo. He was voted by the people, and we as race, the Afroculture Network, we are there just to instill that dream of Lumumba to see
Mhm.
Congo free and not only politically, because people do not know that Lumumba had an economic plan for the Congo after being in contact with Kwame Nkrumah and other Pan Africanists. He was working with Pan Africanists like Andre Blouin and a very great team. And for him, he was not only a national leader, he was a Pan African leader. That's why Lumumba is celebrated everywhere. So for us, Lumumba is the model, and that's why with the organization Race here, we are trying to read, to understand Lumumba by reading Lumumba's history. And me and with my brother, my fellow teacher of history, Didier Malango and Le Messager High School, we are there to let students know the vision because we should build the foundation of the Congo uh, community change should come, and community development should come from the ground and from the families and schools. People should know Lumumba in Congo. They don't even know the meaning of this day because we went there. You can see in the streets, apart from the changer interchange, a crossroads there where there is the mausoleum, the museum. People do not celebrate him in the roads, but you can see other in other countries, Lumumba is celebrated, and then this is for us a shame. It is a shame to say that people do not know and they don't understand Lumumba. That's why we use books like Mama Bibian Lumumba, the freedom fighter. And this is the second book with the book club that we organize in schools. We are there to read the story how Lumumba was born, how he went from Onalua, from Sankura up to Kinshasa, and how he was fighting for his own life and the life of all Congolese people who were living under oppression, exploitation, domination, and all these kinds of barbaric actions made by imposed by Belgians, and he was still fighting. If he fought for the people, that's why we are there to make them understand. And today was a special day where students they were writing letters to Lumumba. So we collected around 10 letters to Lumumba. Students, they were not only studying his history, but they were also talking to Lumumba, just a kind of inspiration, a kind of contact, and critical thinking. We are about to create a critical thinking because students were talking to Lumumba, writing to him, remembering, reminding him that what he died of about is not finished and the struggle continues. They were writing letters, they were reading letters before the monument, the mausoleums. That's the activity we were doing. And we said we will not do it at the school, but
Ah,
we
let's go.
needed to go to, yeah. Can, can you hear me,
Yeah.
brother?
Yes.
No.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear
Yeah.
me too?
Sorry. Yes. Yes. I was trying to play one of the because you talk about the letter. I think that was very powerful. The letter that the kid wrote. But before we go into the letter, can you tell us about you? You talk about your organization, Race. Can you tell us more about the organization? What do you guys do? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Race organizations started in 2023. So during the African Child Day, where we celebrated students and street children, and we went there to express the ideas and the context of the African child, and we are there to sensitize students to know the history of African people and the history of Africa by using education. We went in schools to ask students to know Congo, the history of Congo in Africa, because most students think that after getting the national diploma or the national degree, they want to go abroad to America, to Europe. But we also teach them the love of Africa, and we also work with artists. We are there to communicate, to teach people the love of the Congo, and also the social cultural change. People should change their mentality. They should follow the model of our forefathers like Lumumba and other Pan African leaders. And also we have actions on the ground and for street children. And with the support of Friend of the Congo, we try to organize conferences in schools and out of the schools in studios. We perform music. Like this year, I've been working on my album entitled African Congo Revolution. So a number of activities with artists, with also teachers who are there to tell us about their story because people don't want to know the story, the history of the Congo and Africa. And this is the problem, for example, in Eastern Congo, where
Mm.
enemies are using their, they're changing the history in order to manipulate, to corrupt those people who are killing their brothers and sisters. And that's how we work with race organization. Race
What does
is
race
from
stand
French.
for?
Yeah,
What does race stand for?
yeah. Race stands for Réseau Afroculture. So I can translate in English as Afro Culture Network. Network. We are there just
Wow.
to connect with Pan Africanists because Frank Fanon said that Congo is the trigger and Africa is a revolver. So Congo will not stand alone. So Congo should be helped by other African countries in order to bring about change. So what is
Mm.
happening in Congo? It is because African leaders do not know the importance of Congo. If Congo is developed, so we will influence other countries, and this is the message we try to
Yeah.
teach, and we use those means. So first is hard, and two, the second is education, teaching by organizing conferences and also social actions and
Hmm.
everything. We have a book club every Saturday. We meet, we read a book, and we are reading Mama Vivian's book entitled Lumumba, the Freedom Fighter. This is the
Yeah.
book we are planning to start next February. We say thank you for Friend of the Congo to have sent us books and for the support because this reading culture is not loved by, promoted by, and not only
Hmm.
schools, but not only children don't like reading, but also adults and mature people. That's why we want to teach people about the situation, the historical analysis,
I,
in order to have
I,
critical thinking. Yes, sir.
yes, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna play the video of the kids, and maybe we can comment on that real quick. So I'm gonna play that video, and then yes, let me see.
Cher Patrice Lumumba,
Dear Patrice Lumumba,
je vous écris avec une profonde émotion,
I'm writing to you with a profound emotion,
comme on écrit à un père de la nation,
like we write to a father of a nation,
un nom dont le nom traverse le temps sans jamais perdre sa force.
and now a name that is pronounced without fear.
Vous n'êtes plus physiquement parmi nous,
You are no longer with us physically,
mais votre voix,
but your voice,
vos combats et vos idéaux
your struggles, your fights,
continuent de résonner dans le cœur du peuple congolais.
opinions are still ringing in the hearts of Congolese people.
Merci du fond de cœur
Thank you from the bottom of my heart
pour ce que vous avez fait pour notre pays.
for everything you've done for my country.
Merci de votre courage face à l'injustice,
Thank you for your courage against injustice,
pour votre refus
your refusing
de courber les chéniers,
to bow,
pour votre amour sincère du Congo.
for your sincere love to the country of Congo.
Vous avez osé rêver d'un pays libre,
You have attempted to dream about a free country,
digne, souverain, où chaque Congolais aurait sa place
sovereign and worthy
et sa valeur.
and its value.
Vous avez payé ces rêves
You have paid this dream.
au prix le plus lourd,
You have paid this dream by a very high cost,
et c'est avec une immense reconnaissance que nous portons votre
and it is with a great acknowledgement that we are here.
Depuis votre départ,
Since your departure,
le pays a beaucoup changé,
the country has changed a lot.
mais il a aussi beaucoup souffert.
It has also suffered a lot.
Le Congo est riche, mais
Congo's
souvent
rich.
trop
Souvent,
mais souvent pauvre.
but Congo is rich, but is practically poor.
Les blessures de l'histoire ne sont pas tous refermées.
The wounds of the history are not healed yet.
Les divisions, les corruptions,
The division, the corruption, embarrassments,
l'insécurité et les luttes
insecurity and the struggle for power
continue de freiner l'élan que vous aviez voulu
continue to hinder, to prevent what you dreamed of,
que vous avez voulu donner à la nation.
what you wanted to give to the nation.
Par moments, on se demande si le chemin emprunté correspond vraiment à celui que vous aviez tracé avec tant de choses.
Sometimes we think about the ways our leaders are embracing, and which is totally different from yours,
De clarté et de conviction.
without clarity and full of divisions.
Aviez-vous imaginé un Congo encore en quête de stabilité
Thinking about a Congo, a great Congo,
où la voix du peuple peine parfois à être entendue?
a Congo today, Congo, the voice of the people is not heard.
Aviez-vous voulu que l'intérêt personnel passe avant l'intérêt général?
Did you dream of a Congo promoting personal interest and to the detriment of general interest?
Ces questions nous hantent.
These questions are just denying and lying to us.
Car nous savons que votre vision était celle d'un État juste.
Your vision was about a just and fair nation,
Fort et uni au service de son peuple et non de quelques-uns.
and serving its people, but not to a group of people.
Malgré tout, votre combat n'a pas été fait.
Nevertheless, we haven't stopped.
Il fut dans la conscience de ceux qui refusent la justice.
Your struggle lives in the spirit of those who are conscious,
Dans l'espoir de jeunes qui croient encore à un Congo meilleur.
hoping about young people who dream about a great Congo.
Dans chaque citoyen qui ose rêver d'un avenir à la hauteur de vos idéaux.
In the spirit, in the hearts of every Congolese who dreamed and who is struggling for their justice.
Vous êtes devenu plus qu'un homme.
You have become more than a man.
Vous êtes une référence, une lumière, un rappel constant que ce que le Congo peut et doit être.
You are now a light that's a reference of Congolese people. You are shining for us.
Recevez, cher Lumumba,
Dear Lumumba,
l'hommage sincère d'une fille du Congo reconnaissante.
the tribute of conscious
Yes, and that was a really powerful letter, and I can see that there was, oh, it was packed. And that was at the site, right? At the Lumumba site.
Yes, brother. That's the mausoleum was just in opposite to where Azunda was reading. It was really interesting to listen to these students. Very smart students. We were surprised to listen to these powerful words.
Yes.
Yeah, like that. It's fair to say.
Yes, and the letter was really powerful, talking about like a letter, because I always ask myself, right, 65 years, what would have Lumumba even, like if Lumumba was alive today, what would he think of the Congo? What would he think of the leaders, of what the Congo has become, right? And she talks about corruption, she talks about embezzlement, and everything else that we know, that you said at the beginning, that Lumumba was killed because he was really trying to unify the Congo, the Congolese people, right? And he was killed because of that. And now we see the division, people divided because of tribe, because of money, because of political party. He transcended that. So to see those kids, to see the youth, to articulate the vision of Lumumba in that letter, I only have one question, maybe to kind of like close out your segment, is how can people watching this really help transform that memory of Lumumba into a responsibility? And that's the work that you've been doing with the children.
Yeah, brother. Yeah. Can I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. How can we
Yeah,
transform? How can we have transformed the memory of Lumumba into a tangible action that requires some sort of, or some sense of responsibility for every one of us?
that's really, really good. And I think the work we're trying to do by creating a collective leadership, because these children, it is very difficult to corrupt such a person. So, because this generation will be prepared. So, for in the coming years. So, after 10 years, 20 years, if such a person becomes a leader, a president, I don't know, minister for whichever, I mean, position, the person will be prepared. And I think the problem with our society, I mean, the ruling class, the superstructure is not prepared from the basis. I mean,
Mm,
we need a popular education schools, the schools that teach uh, our history, our reality, and our culture. A person like Lumumba is not known. And with my fellow teacher of history, we are planning to just to implement this program of teaching Lumumba's ideology, and by inserting asking the ministry in charge of primary, secondary, and professional education, just to have this program, a special program where people will be understanding Lumumba and Okito and Mpolo and all these freedom fighters and their ideas, because the ideas of Lumumba and other freedom fighters constitute a kind of map road to our
mm,
community. And if people know why Lumumba was killed, you will not find leaders who make actions which are against the will and the general interest of the people. You will not see people who I don't know grew up in Belgium, in Europe, I don't know where, wherever, and they come back here just to serve their masters who are in Europe. So the kinds
mm,
of leaders who are not connected to the social realities from the base, the background. So
mm,
we need to prepare from the background, and in
mm,
our schools, not only normal formal schools, but we also need to create popular and public schools, ideological schools, where we'll have people who are prepared like these students. And we started last year with these students, and it is difficult to see more Congolese people, even teachers, our colleagues, our fellow teachers, were not interested in such a program, such an activity where we were celebrating the African uh, child. I mean, all the African history activities. And so they are not interested in thinking, critical thinking programs. They are there just to talk about football match, to talk about some music and things which are not really concerning and touching the general interest of the country. That's why we have to prepare, and we need programs like these. We are planning with Mama Vivian, for example, thinking about a collection of these letters to produce a book, something like that, and books which tell us the truth, because the
mm,
educational system we have in Congo is based more on what is European, but our culture is really ignored. And that's why we will have this program. And also, we need to go and sensitize, mobilize like Lumumba was doing. He was a popular leader. He could reach the masses. You could see him organizing some propaganda, trying to explain and also learn from the people. Because everything when we people become leaders, they should have the knowledge and mastery of not only the history, but also the geographical aspects. I know you have leaders who are busy traveling, who are busy
Mhm.
going to, I don't know, Europe, to Paris, rather than knowing the even the country itself. I was
Yeah.
surprised, for example, and to see that random people, they know our country better than ourselves. They know
Yeah.
our history, they know our geography, everything related to our culture, even the languages. So they take time to understand us. So, and our educational system is not allowing us to know all these things, and also creating some groundings activities like this one to go and visit where Lumumba
Mhm.
was born, and all these places that reflect our history, that
Yeah.
reflects our realities. I think that's the way
Yeah.
we may have leaders, because these leaders should be prepared and they should know the community, because they will serve the community tomorrow. And we, like teachers, we have to learn from books, from history, by using these activities. And also we are thinking about film screening, for example, to know all these documentations, and also public forums between elders and the young generation. So we
Yeah.
should make a bridge, and so we will go between
Yes.
two generations, and there should be a transition, because this is the problem. Uh, Not only from the superstructure, like they said, the hegemonic group of
Mhm.
Congolese leaders are there just to prepare their children. Their children study in
The
Europe, in
elite.
USA, I don't
Yes.
know where, but uh, their children don't know the history, the reality happening in Congo. Their children are living abroad, and they are just here to take money, to loot. But if we have
Yes.
leaders who know the history and they live on the ground, they know the country, like Lumumba. Lumumba was able, he could go and live in Belgium, but he refused.
Mhm.
He even resigned some jobs, and he was in charge when he was working for the post office. He was working in so many some offices. I mean, in places where Belgians were just ill-treating Congolese people, and he could stand up and mobilize his people. Those are the kind of leaders we need. So
Yeah.
we need to have, in order to have so as to come with responsible programs, responsible leaders, responsible management actions that will help the country. I think it is a
Yeah.
whole system. Lumumba, uh, people feared Lumumba because he was not because he was reading. I mean, he was reading. He studied normal schools. Lumumba was busy reading books, and he learned from the books. That's why we created the book club,
Book
just
club.
to help
Yeah.
students know the history, the reality. So there is
Yes.
a proverb here in Kinshasa, in Congo, saying that if you want to add uh, and to hide something to Congolese people, just write it down. Even money,
Yeah.
put it in a book. They will not find it, because they don't like reading. Though it is
Mm.
from the
So you
reading
wanna
that we
so you wanna
understand the
rekindle
society.
that desire, that thirst of reading, and not just reading anything, reading about Congolese history and educating folks so that they can realize the potential of the Congo and also the mission. I think Francois said that that's uh, each generation has a mission to either fulfill it or betray it. And the Congolese mission as a generation, right? Our generation, even the generation before me, the generation after me, particularly the young folks, the generation after me, particularly the young people that we saw. There was also a video of another guy reading a letter. Um, their mission is even greater than ours, right? Like because they have that burden of carrying the struggle, the fight, the mission that Lumumba had. So I appreciate you and the work that you're doing within race, the réseau africain, c'est ça? Is that it?
Of
Réseau
culture, yeah.
Afro-Culture, yes, the Afro-Cultural Network. I think that's the translation in English. But thank you again for the work that you've been doing. You've been a value, I would say, partner in the work that we're doing. Um, in Kinshasa in the Congo with the youth. And you mentioned the book club, and that reminded me of the conversation that I had during Congo Week when I went to Atlanta with Professor Samuel Livingstone, the Morehouse College, trying to create that bridge, like having the students in Morehouse collaborate, talk with the students in the Congo, and also think about the book club that Patricia Ndome, my sister from Bandundu, trying to also create with the interns that we have a book club to get that going, because there are a lot of books to educate that needs to be out there. And then you're right that the education system right now is not designed to awake consciousness, and that's why Friends of the Congo exists, to raise global consciousness, because there is definitely that lack, that is missing. So thank you, Passy, for what you've been doing. You'll be back, I'm pretty sure, on here, but I really wanted to be appreciative of the work that you'll be doing within your own capacity, and also as a partner um, to Friends of the Congo. So thank you, Passy.
Yeah, thank you for the support. Thank you, friend of the Congo, the whole team, the Alara team, Brother Kwame, by Professor Samori, Sister Patricia, Mama Koswane, the whole team. Thank you for the support and inspiration to the creating our book club here. Thank you, bro.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that was Passy Igunzi from the Afroculture Network, Réseau Afroculturel. And it's fascinating, right? That you have kids in that letter being able to articulate the assassination of Lumumba, and asking questions. And not just asking questions, but also stating the obvious, that the chaos that was orchestrated during Lumumba's death was not by mistake, it was by design. That Lumumba was killed by coordination, right? And I mentioned that at the beginning, Belgium, the United States, the Congo, the Cold War logic, and also the Congolese people. That lady talks about, that young lady talks about in her letter, thinking about what the Congo has become in the midst of the oppression, in the midst of corruption, embezzlement done by Congolese people, by the Congolese elite that Passy mentioned, who are only focused to uplift their own people or their own tribes or their own political party. That whenever they're sick, they're gonna go outside of the country. That they send the kids to study in the US, in Europe, instead of building more schools. And when you have the World Bank trying to chime in and say, okay, we appreciate the idea of a free education, we're going to put money into this project. Under President Tshisekedi, the current president, what happened? Corruption. They were multiplying by 2, by 3 the numbers of professors. So professors that didn't exist at all, but they needed to be paid. How can you pay someone that doesn't exist? So wanting to destroy keep destroyed the healthcare system, because they got the money to send the kids or themselves to get treated overseas, right? So it's important to mention the story of Lumumba's assassination, that the Belgium admitted that it had a moral responsibility. Returned the truth, and I said at the beginning. The United States declassified document confirmed that the CIA was involved. The most expensive mission of the CIA at the time was in the Congo, the equivalent of $80 million today. Mobutu, who led the country for 32 years, he wasn't just a regular man that became president by accident. He was groomed by the CIA. He was financed. He was protected. And I mentioned at the beginning, Katanga region, super rich in resources, backed by the Belgian mining interest, the same multinational companies that somehow find a way to dig resources and send them overseas to allow to power the phone industry, the laptop industry, while the Congolese people are getting shot, dead. When the women of the Congo are being raped, they continue to profit. So at that time in Katanga, the Belgian mining interest was the staging ground for Lumumba's execution, because they did not want the Belgian people to pull the trigger. So it was not about communism, it was about minerals. Again, the control of Congolese internal affairs, which includes minerals. Because minerals, what is, and that's in the constitution of the Congo, what is in the soil of the Congo, so the resources, that is the Congolese sovereignty. But you need a structure in place to remind that to people, to remind that to the next generation. That's the work that people like Passy has been doing, and Friends of the Congo has been really glad and honored to work directly with folks on the ground. We don't need to say the Friends of the Congo did that. We don't need to put make a video and put Friends of the Congo logo on it. We don't need to go in camps and take photos of those kids suffering and say that this is what we're doing. No, we let them speak for themselves, because the Congolese people, guess what? And we had Passy, they organize. They organize themselves in collective, in organizations. And all we do is provide them with the platform and the support that they need. Because that's the type of education that liberates a country. Not the performative liberations or struggle that will provide few clicks. Because it's the performative liberation is what allow people, even in the midst of trying to liberate a country, will somehow be able to make trips in the Goma occupied region, occupied by Rwanda. Because there are certainly some parts where Lumumba couldn't put his feet in. I mean, that's where he was killed, right? In the Katanga region. They sent him directly in enemy territories, his fellow Congolese that was bribed and corrupt. Because when he stands for an ideal, when you're fighting for what you think is right, when you think is just, you become dangerous. And Lumumba being dangerous isn't because he was actually physically dangerous, but because he wanted an independent mind, because he wanted to liberate the Congo. So what is the role of Congolese people, even the elites today? Because I'm going to continue to say this again and again, and even the folks on the ground with race, they say it. Passy said it. And we have to be really careful, but also clearly. That those who killed Lumumba were not Europeans only. There were also Congolese elites who chose power over the people. We had Kambale said here that he chose to be on the side of the Congolese people, and I repeated that last time. Lumumba, who was one of the very first Congolese to put their feet in Belgium, chose the people, organized with the people, marched with the people, and he was shot for the people. And whoever took his place, Mobutu, who led the country for 32 years, it was not a man that, again, like I mentioned earlier, did not appear out of nowhere. He rose with silence. And if you watch the movie or the documentary soundtrack of a coup d'etat, you understand the politics that played, that orchestrated Lumumba's assassination. You will understand the opportunism, the betrayal of the Congolese. And that pattern, unfortunately, did not end in 1961. We see that today, and that's why it's very important, like Passy said, to educate, to remind folks of Lumumba, but also to remind folks of today. Remind folks of peace deals that legitimize armed groups. Lumumba called out the United Nations that sent illegally troops in the Congo. He called them out. You would have surely called out nations that invade or violate the sovereignty of the Congo. So we need education that reminds folks of government that sign away sovereignty abroad. Education to remind folks about the elites who protect foreign interest. Why the Congolese people are still burying the dead? So Lumumba assassinations really created this wave of political culture where serving the Congo became dangerous and serving yourself became safer. And we see that today. Not to mention names. I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually really itching to actually name. But Brother Kambale talked about organization that won't even call out the Congolese government. Not once, call them out. Not even call out other governments of other countries, violating the sovereignty of other nations. Aren't we on the same boat? Isn't the Congo today has his part of his territory being occupied? Then how can you sit silent when you see another nation seeing their territories being occupied? So it is safe for them to speak about things that will profit or benefit them, and safe for them to be silenced when it comes to the real questions of corruption, the real question of occupation, and the real question of justice. It is safe for them to talk about charity and call people to donate, and safe for them to be quiet when Bunagana has been occupied for over 3 years now, when Goma has been occupied for a year, when Bukavu has been occupied. This is the unfinished battle that we have to take on for Lumumba. Because for decades, Lumumba was erased from textbooks. People talk about Lumumba, but not really the sacrifice that he made and what he really stood for. Okay, he was shot by the Belgian, but why was he shot? Why was he killed? Talk about blaming the Belgian, but not blaming the corrupt elites. That his body was dissolved in acid because his memory was meant to disappear. But memory really does something very powerful. And we've seen that as in the United States, folks are getting ready to also commemorate MLK Day. Memory outlived violence. Because Lumumba lives rent-free in the mind of the oppressor. and he gladly lives rent-free in my mind, in the mind of the students that we saw that refuse silence. Activists connecting Congo to Palestine, Venezuela, Sudan, Haiti, and the global South. Artists and historian, and ordinary people refusing amnesia. That even if we live in a world where the colonial powers wanted a quiet death, what they got instead was an entire world talking about Lumumba. They got an echo what Lumumba stood for. So if Lumumba was alive today, he would ask a few questions about the Congo in the context of the Congo. He would ask why are foreign troops still on Congolese soil? He would ask about the Pacific, like how passive, how inefficient the UN, the United Nations force is. He would ask why are minerals still exported without transformation? Can you imagine if those minerals were transformed in the Congo? The job that would create. The conversation here is not to tell you that if those were created and we are all guilty of that, your iPhone will probably cost $3,000. That's just the fact. Your laptop would cost more. That's why those minerals are not being transformed where they are being mined. Why are people digging? Like, why those miners are getting paid like $1, $2 a day for 8 hours or more of work? Because they want to keep those prices of your iPhones, of your Samsung, of your Dell, your laptop so low that they will be able to buy your conscience and make you forget the price of getting cobalt, the price of getting coltan, the price of getting copper. Lumumba will also ask another question is why are elections protected but sovereignty is not? Why are countries that are leading the world today will be okay with elections no matter how they happen? Elections must happen in the Congo every 4 years, every 5 years, actually. Because we need that transfer of power. But it doesn't matter how they happen. It doesn't matter if a nation invade the Congo. Lumumba will also ask another pertinent question. Why are peace accords signed without justice? MLK said that justice, to paraphrase him, is the peace is the presence of justice. Peace is the presence of justice. So Lumumba will tell us that peace without justice is occupation by another name. He didn't just ask for the Congo to be independent. He didn't say thank you for giving us this independence. He reminded folks why the Belgians were even okay standing and saying, okay, you guys are going to be independent because people fought for it. But once he became prime minister, once he started leading, and even when this general, I really forgot his name, but when his general said that, hey, before the independence, will be equal to after the independence because he was a Belgian general in the army, and that made the Congolese folks furious, angry. What do you mean before the independence is equal to after the independence? And Patrice Lumumba stepped in and said no. And that general got removed from his function because he was clearly showing that we are taking a different path right now, the path of justice. And if Lumumba was alive, he would also remind us that Africa will write its own history. But a history that is written by those who organize, those who remember, and those who resist. That the history is not written in speeches alone. It's not written in a way that forces folks to be trapped. But like Passy said, when talking about education, it's a history that must be written in classrooms, taught by Congolese themselves, in neighborhoods, in youth spaces, in the quiet discipline worked of formation, of training. That's what Friends of the Congo does. When we raise global consciousness, we provide a 101 guide to Congo history, to Congo's affair or issues or crisis, to this Pan-African idea of a free Congo, where dignity is restored and the responsibility is learned. What is my responsibility if someone born and raised in the Congo? What is your responsibility watching this? 65 years later, the most important question is not only what was done to Lumumba. Don't get me wrong. What was done to him was atrocious, was wrong. But 65 years later, the most important question is what's today's generation chooses to do with his legacy? What is our mission? And that's why the conversation of Lumumba that we celebrate every year at Friends of the Congo for 17 days up until January 17th. Because we understand that that conversation cannot remain in the context of 1961. He has to move in Kinshasa. He has to move in London. He has to move, that conversation has to move in Washington, D.C., in Portland, Oregon, in Geneva, to the youth, to the present. And when I asked the question, Brother Passy, again, how to help transform memory into responsibility, I'm going to summarize in one word. He said education. So we got to continue to educate folks. We got to continue to amplify the voices of those who know what is good for them. Because 65 years later, believe me, Lumumba is not asking us to mourn him. He's asking us something even harder and more difficult. Not to trade dignity for stability. Not to accept the crumbs while sitting on the abundance, because Congo is rich. Not to continue to outsource the future of Congolese people. Instead, Lumumba is calling us to believe that the Congo belongs to Congolese people. That's the hardest part to do. And make it happen. He was assassinated January 17, 1961. But the demand of a free Congo, remains part of the present. And until that becomes a reality, the story of the Congo and the story of Patrice Lumumba is not over. And until that story is not over, the mission of Friends of the Congo remains. So I hope you liked this episode again. Follow us and subscribe on YouTube if you're watching us on YouTube. Follow us on X if you're watching us from X. On Facebook, if you're watching us on Facebook, visit lumumbaday.org and please order the graphic novel of Maman Bibiane, Lumumba the Freedom Fighter. I hope you have a great weekend, folks. And by God's grace, I will catch you up next week. Ciao.